Sheila, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you today.
Thank you, Brian. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation with you. I know you got your new book coming out, so congrats on that. That's a big step. This is your first one, right? Or am I wrong on that?
No, this is my first book. I actually
Yeah.
never thought I would write a book. So it's really been a thrilling ride, something very unfamiliar and exciting.
It's funny because you're not the first person on the podcast that has said that. It's like, oh, somehow the book writing. How did you come to it then? How did the idea pop up?
It basically came out of what I call unmet need. I'm a physician in the biotech space. We're always developing therapies for what we perceive as unmet need. And what I found was when I was really growing up professionally in big companies and climbing the corporate ladder, and then in small companies, and then starting my own companies as a founder, an entrepreneur, there's no playbook or manual. And so I really wrote this for my younger self. It's what I wish I had, before I took some of the big roles that I took. Um, I argue that it's always hard for anyone who's stepping into these roles, and we learn a lot. Trial by fire. We learn a lot on the job. But I do think if you are a woman or someone from a different kind of background, sometimes you don't have the same networks and that mentorship and sponsorship that kind of naturally and organically flows.
Yeah.
You just may not have access to those types of people, networks, and be in those conversations. So it can make our journey and our rise somewhat more challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know this firsthand. My wife is an immigrant from Iraq.
Mhm.
And, I kind of, just hear stories of what she went through when she first came to the US. And I guess she was 15, 16, and just those type of things. So, yeah, I mean, books like yours are probably very relevant for a lot of people.
I have found that to be the case, and I've had so much wonderful feedback already, um, because I think I've just in terms of reaching my audience and
Mhm.
people who really resonate with what I'm writing. I've read a lot of the leadership books out there for men and women, and I've greatly benefited from those. But I did find that they weren't really getting at to what I'm really experiencing day to day. And so I wanted to write something that would be very transparent, very honest, more raw and vulnerable,
Yeah.
I think, than what I've read. And from someone who's been through these experiences directly. So this is basically from the front lines,
Yeah.
my lessons learned through my successes and failures. And then I also really wanted to be very practical. So I wanted to just make it really come alive for people. So I'm excited to tell you more about that.
Yeah, I'm excited to get in that a little bit later in the conversation. I'd love to start off just for a little bit before we get in the rapid fire, because one of the things kind of researching for the conversation, I love this kind of the inflection points that people have throughout their life, like these random events that happen that maybe we don't even know they're going to happen. Can you share a little bit about your first semester in at university and kind of how that time in your life really shaped maybe where you're at today?
Yes, it was a very formative experience, as I'm sure it is for everybody. For me personally, it was a sad time. It was a challenging time because I actually just had lost my father like the year prior, and I was a junior in high school, and he died very suddenly. And so I kind of kissed him goodnight one night, and he actually died during the night. And my mom had taken him to the hospital, and she didn't let us know. She didn't wake us up. I don't, I'm sure she didn't really understand that this could be the last time we could have seen him. And by time the phone kept ringing at 5 in the morning, and then I remember getting out of the bed saying, "Why aren't my parents getting the phone?" And it was my mom on the other end, and she was really crying. And I just knew it was just this horrific event in my life that really kind of destroyed my worldview, and made me question everything. And by the time I got to the hospital, he was already unconscious, so I didn't get to say goodbye to him. So there was like no closure, very sudden, very traumatic, and I was very, very close to him. And so, but because I grew up in this immigrant family and culture, it was like there was really no space or resources or ideas or perspectives on how to deal with this type of grief and loss. So I had 2 days off from high school, and I was supposed to go right back into it. And, I remember we had this memorial service over the weekend. This happened on a Thursday. And then I basically started back at school full time on Monday. And we didn't really talk about it. I didn't go through any therapy. So when I actually went to college, I think a lot of, and I was spending a lot of time by myself, of course, and you're an adult living your life. I think a lot of that started to hit me very hard. And it was very formative because I realized that I had to deal with this for myself, and I had to figure out how to navigate my life. And that was the first step in my journey. It was a very spiritual journey, and it has been a very spiritual journey. And I think that laid the foundation and the underpinning for everything I've done subsequently. It also set kind of the vision, my purpose, my values. So yeah, so it was very formative, just kind of coming to grips for what was going to be important for me in this life.
I was just kind of curious, how did you could have went to a yoga retreat down the street? How did you go halfway across the world to this?
Yeah, so I mean, when I was in school, I mean, this was a long time ago, and like, people didn't talk about yoga or meditation or anything. We hardly talked about therapy, right? It was just a different time zone, and it was. So I was in school. I was in a 7-year medical program. It was very intense. I was doing engineering also,
Oh,
in as an undergrad, which was a 3-year. So then I had to do 4 years and 3 years, and it was accelerated honors program, and I was accepted into medical school from high school, which I was very happy about. I actually chose this program over some other options in terms of universities because I knew, I think a part of me knew that I needed some time to basically deal with some of my grief. And I think going right into a high pressure pre-med environment where I still had to get into medical school, I think was that kind of very much stressed me out. So this way, at least I knew I was in medical school and I could really focus on taking classes I enjoyed. And so that gave me some space. So I was very grateful to be in this 7-year medical program. But basically, yeah, as I was going through school, I just found like I needed more help. And because of my father, he had a very strong spiritual practice. So he had a guru who lived full time in India, but he would come to the US for trips over the summer. And I kind of grew up with him. He was like my grandfather. His name was Swami Dayananda Saraswati. He has since passed. It's been about 10 years since he passed. But he was an incredible teacher of Vedanta, which is this Hindu philosophy, which is very similar to Buddhism,
hmm.
talking about how, really just the truth of our existence and what we experience every day. And that's really the subject matter, ourselves, the world, our idea of God, how it's all connected. So during when I called him to ask for help, and he said, "Come stay with me in my ashram in India, and take this course with me, a 6-month course, and just spend every evening with me because I think he knew I was just really needing some fatherly love,
Yeah.
and he gave that to me every night, and it was so healing."
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's well, and you think about it, I guess, to even just, I guess 6 months, I'm assuming you didn't do schooling during that time, kind of just
Yeah,
took a pause.
so I had to figure out when to take time off because I was in this again very accelerated program, and so I actually ended up finishing my undergrad and doing the first 2 years of medical school, and then there was a time where you start doing clinical rotations.
Okay.
So during that, I decided to take a year off, which was hard for me because I was basically getting out of sync with my class, and they were
Oh,
all moving forward, and I was
okay.
like, I'm gonna stay behind a year, and I took a year off, and that's when I went to India, and I basically spent a year in India at this ashram, as well as I traveled all over, which also was very amazing and rewarding. It was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made. I'm a big fan of taking time off,
Yeah.
spending time with yourself. I feel like it's really necessary to get connected to our inner voice and figure out what we truly want in life.
Yeah, I find like because obviously I didn't have this when I was growing up as well. Like I didn't, you don't think about that, but like even just taking a span of time to figure like where, because I think we jump from high school and then you got to go to college and then right there get a job and all of a sudden it's like you're 30 and it's like, whoa, where did life go? And you might not even be doing what you want to do.
I think that's so true. And we grow up with a lot of pressure. There's parental, familial pressure, cultural, societal, now geopolitical. I mean,
Yeah.
and I really feel for the next generations. I have two children who are in their teen years. One is in his first year of college, and one is in high school. And so I'm so really tuned into their mindset and understanding what's going on for them every day. And with the changing environment and the uncertainties, because it's so dynamic and almost frenetic,
Yeah.
and how they're also bombarded by so much information that I was not, there wasn't even email when I was growing up. So I feel like getting clarity on what you want to do, finding your inner voice, your North Star, your compass is the most important thing and most difficult thing to do in life. And so whatever that takes for you to get that clarity is something I highly support and recommend. And sometimes it can be also going against what your parents and family and, again, society wants you to do. My mom was not happy I took a year off. She was
Yeah.
really concerned. She was afraid I was going to drop out of medical school. No one was taking gap years at the time. And so it was like, you're messing up your life. But I followed through, and I'm so glad I did.
Yeah. Well, and again, I want to kind of layer in on that when we get into the conversation further, but we got to do our rapid fire tradition of the podcast. So
Okay.
here we go. I don't know what questions are going to come. We'll kind of go into these a little bit. So here we go. When was the last time you wanted to give up but didn't?
Like this morning. uh, you
That could
know,
be true. I mean, hey, that's
yeah, I am in the biotech industry, and um, developing drugs is like there's a very high failure rate, basically, and I'm always amazed when a drug gets approved. And I've been so fortunate that I've worked on a number of drugs that have gotten approved. But it's a very difficult financing environment right now. And I have a couple of startups I'm trying to raise for, and I've been talking to investor after investor after investor, and it's a little exhausting.
yeah.
So every day I'm always like, oh, it wouldn't just be so nice to just, maybe walk away from this. But then I'm like, no, we have to do this. I know why we're doing it. I'm so excited about the technology that I'm developing and the potential medicines we could be creating and the amazing people I'm working with. So it keeps me going. But sometimes I have a little bit of that dialogue.
Yeah.
You have to be incredibly resilient to be in any company, but to be an entrepreneur and a founder. And so that resilience is something that you just have to kind of keep coming back to and exercising like a muscle.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and I want to get into the, kind of the inner critic stuff a little bit later. So that's a good lead into it. Okay. What's the mental checklist you run through before saying yes to something?
Well, in some ways, I've been trying to get better at just following my energy level and quieting down, and again, listening to my body and that inner voice, because I am a people pleaser. I don't know how much
Yeah,
of
guilty.
your audience. Okay. So, and I write about this in the book. And again, there's nothing bad about being a people pleaser, but just kind of having that awareness and understanding this real pressure to say yes to everything. It's there in everything I do, in my family, in my professional life, with my friends. I also want to be as helpful as possible. So I tend to overcommit because I just keep saying yes. I have a very hard time saying no. So I've been trying to just follow my energy to say, do I really want to do this? Or do I feel pressure or obligations? What is driving me to want, to be involved with this particular activity?
Yeah.
And so that's really what I've been trying to kind of like almost let go somewhat of the mental checklist and just kind of get into my body and just be like, am I excited about this? And if I'm excited, great. What about it excites me? If I'm not excited, why am I not excited also? Like I'm trying to like just really be honest with myself. And so again, not easy, but I highly recommend it for everybody to do. And like one of my coaches talked about like, having an energy level on a 10-point scale. And when you get up in the morning, how's your energy? Are you excited to go into work or do whatever you're going to do that day? And just start paying attention to that every morning, every night. Like, where's your energy level at? And for this particular request, how does it feel? Do you want to go do this? And you're like excited, yes, or is it more like, oh no, I really don't? And then also kind of understanding why that is, because sometimes it's because you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself. And if you took away that pressure and those expectations, maybe you would be really excited to do that thing.
Yeah.
And then I have a whole mental checklist I go through for biotech that I can walk you through too. I mean, it's like, am I excited about the science? Do I really want to work with the people who are involved? And then just practically, can I see the path forward to driving value, to, to reaching those inflection milestones, as you're saying, for the
Yep.
company and for the program. And if I believe in all of that, and all of that's like a resounding yes, that's a good mental checklist for me.
How long is, because that's a long decision process, right? Because you're developing these drugs for years. Like how, I guess, how do you make that final decision of like, okay, I'm putting energy for the next X number of years?
It's a great question because you're right. Drug development has a very long timeline. It also costs a ton of money. So when you're signing up to work with a company or join a board or run a company, you're typically talking about a 5-year time horizon, which seems a little bit overwhelming and daunting at times. So you have to be really clear. I really advocate for people, take your time, decide, like, is this a really big yes for you? Because you're going to be a lot longer than you think you're going to be it usually.
Good point. All right, let's go number three here. Who is a mentor that was a big part of you becoming who you are?
Well, one of my biggest mentors is my mother. I'm really fortunate that I grew up with a very powerful female role model in my life. So she grew up in India and she decided to become a doctor. So they were very poor. My mother's side of the family was very poor. They were kind of living week to week. And her father was a brilliant engineer, but he got hit by a car and there was really no disability in India at the
Oh, wow.
time. So he lost his job, again, no disability. So they were living week to week just to have enough food and clothing. And so my mom grew up, and my mom and all my uncles, her three brothers, really grew up with that scarcity mindset and that kind of lack mindset, unfortunately. But it also propelled them. They knew their way out was through education, and they were all brilliant. So my mom became a doctor, which was, again, at the time very rare for a woman to be in medical school. And not only did she become a doctor, she was like one of the highest, scoring, students on the entrance exams. And then she was a gold medalist in her medical school. So she was a phenomenal student. And then when she came to the United States, she, was an amazing doctor. So I used to get so much, all these families would come up to me and tell me how my mom, what a great doctor my mother was, and how she saved their child's life, and all these amazing stories about her. And she was really the matriarch of her family. So she brought over her parents and all her three brothers from India
Oh,
to
wow.
the U.S. And then, of course, she really raised us because my dad had his first heart attack when I was 3 years old. So he was quite sick and almost died then. And she was only in her 20s at that time. So she really stepped up to the plate and just took care of everybody. She took care of me and my brother. She took care of our family. But she excelled at work. I mean, she gave 150% to all of her efforts, and she just showed me, she just basically showed me what I could be achieving. And it was different for a lot of my friends whose mothers did stay at home, and they kind of grew up in more of a patriarchal type
Mhm.
of family environment. Not the case in my environment.
Yeah.
It was really my mom. So I guess she, again, just so powerful, and she really, I think, just she was just such a mirror for me and a role model for me.
Is that what ultimately made you go to the medical field side of things? Was because of her?
Yeah, so, I mean, she basically told me I was gonna be a doctor
Oh,
ever since I could remember. So it was like it worked for her. She knew it was like something that was safe and reliable, and like I would always
yeah.
be well taken care of. So for her, it was like, "You're gonna be a doctor." And then our challenges came when I wanted to leave medicine, and she didn't know what I was doing. And then I think her fear really kicked in to say, like, "You're gonna," I don't I just and I know that fear was because she was just worried that I wouldn't be able to take care of myself and my family.
Yeah.
She also taught me as a woman that we always have to be ready to take care of our family, and not, again, I don't have any judgment for women who decide to stay home or men who decide to stay home and work. I mean, and take care of the family and not work. But you always have to be prepared because you just never know what curveballs life's going to throw you.
Right.
And my dad ended up dying very early, and she had to take care of us. So she always taught me that we just, no matter what we do, even if we decide to choose to stay home, we should be able to take care of our families.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love that. That's awesome. All right. Here we go. You have a difficult business decision and only one phone a friend. Who are you making a call to?
Ooh, so good. So good. I have to say, I think it would be my husband.
Yeah.
Um, he is not in the biotech space, but he is a doctor.
Yeah.
He's an emergency room doctor, and he understands, medicine. But he's just like my rock. He's my anchor, my rock, my go-to. I can be the most honest and vulnerable with him about what I'm thinking about a situation, walking him through all the business criteria as well, the people who are involved. So I think I could just be my most authentic self with him to help navigate myself making this business decision. If could only talk to one person,
Mm.
I think it would have to be him.
How does he give you feedback? Is he more listener and then kind of contemplates? Do you guys talk it out? How does the work?
Well, it's been a journey, he used to talk more, and now I think he listens more. Before he was trying to always solve,
I
you
think we're
know,
all learning that as men.
yeah, right. So, and I get it. Like he just wants to solve, and like especially if I'm dealing with difficult personalities, he gets him a little flustered, and he wants to like jump in and like
Yeah.
solve things. I'm just like, I just need you to listen. I just need you to listen to me and listen, and also reflect back to me what you're hearing I'm saying, because I'm not. Sometimes I get a little bit caught up in the environment, and it's like, am I being really objective, or am I being more reactive? So that's kind of been this process for me. I mean, I remember when I met him, and I was actually in my residency, and I was so poor. I had no money. And I was actually deciding to leave academic medicine and go to join a consulting company called McKinsey. Very, really, again, no one did this. I was definitely taking the road less traveled. And my attendings and my professors were telling me I was ruining my life by leaving medicine, especially after I did all my training. And he just looked at me, and we were just dating at the time. And he said, today I work for you. One day everybody's going to work for you. And he just saw me. He just saw my potential. And I said, what are you talking about? But he just saw, like, he just really believed in me. And he thought that I was going to be this amazing leader and very successful in my career. And so he's always just had my back. He's always been the biggest mirror for me and my cheerleader. And
Yeah.
so, yeah. But it's been a process for sure.
Well, I think you learn that though. Like obviously, all relationships have the ebbs and flows to it, but I think that support, that foundation, like that story you just shared right there, that's it, right? Because if you don't have support from the other spouse or the other partner, not going to work. There's going to be cracks in the foundation eventually.
Yes. I also talk about in the book building your personal board of directors
Yeah.
and finding a supportive network and people, and finding your people that you can talk to. So we can come back to that later. But on that board, for example, are some very trusted friends who are amazing investors in the public and the private space. And I do tend to call them because they just have their finger on the pulse. They know the area, they know the competition, they know what big pharma thinks about these programs and targets. So they're just amazing resources for me to kind of help me do my diligence.
Yeah. No, let's stick on that. We can go wherever we want in this conversation. So we'll get to the last question eventually. Um, Talk about the board of directors. That's something I want to chat about as well. I find that a lot of people struggle either asking for mentors or even asking for advice. So how do you, I guess, encourage people to start on that process to build their own board of directors?
Yes. Well, first of all, be gentle with yourself because it is hard. It's hard to put yourself out there. I always struggled. I still struggle with asking for help, or, I don't want to bother anyone. I think that's part of that people pleasing thing. I always want to be helpful for others, but it's hard for me to ask for people to help me.
Yeah.
So, and that I think has to deal with some of our conditioning again, maybe our internal limiting thought patterns and beliefs. So be gentle with yourself and compassionate about yourself, and that you're not alone. This is very normal. And I actually did not do this well at all in the early parts of my career. I just started doing this more recently, kind of being more proactive. And I got that advice from a coach when I was, just even a director in a company telling me, how important it was to build your personal board of directors, and everyone should have one. And I just remember thinking, oh, well, that's great. Like, but I'm not going to do that. Like, I listened to her, but I was like, okay,
Right.
yeah, like whatever. I'm like, I didn't even think that, that was possible for me. But it's so important. It's so important for all of us to have that network, to find your mirrors, people who see you, hear you, understand you, believe you, know you, have your back, and build that personal board of directors, and just, again, find your people. And you should start early in life. And it's going to be a process of trial and error. And that's okay. And it's surprising too. People who you think are going to mentor you end up don't. And the people who you are surprised are really interested in mentoring you. And same thing with sponsorship. So the way I break down the board of directors, just to make it really practical, is I come up with different roles and say, you should have all of these people on your board, just to kind of give some framework to it. So I first start out with your cheerleaders.
Hmm.
Everybody should have their cheerleaders, right? People who just believe you're the bomb and love you and just, think you can do anything, because that's the truth. Actually, you are powerful beyond measure, and you need to
Yeah.
surround yourself with people who think that. This could be your family, your parents, your children, your friends, and your peers, and people who you've impressed along your journey. Professors, teachers, all, it can come in all walks of life. Obviously your partners, and so put your cheerleaders on your board and talk to them often. When that self-limiting doubt, that negative self-talk comes in, go talk to your cheerleaders. I talk about role models. We all need to be inspired. Who do we want to be like? Like you look out and say, wow, like, just always think about when you see someone and they really inspire you, like take note of that.
Yeah.
Put them on your board. You may know them, you may not. If you know them, amazing. Hopefully they can mentor and sponsor you. If you don't know them, that's okay. Put them on your board, because you're going to follow them and see what they're doing and how they're living their life. For me, I've always been really impressed by business leaders who keep the patient at the center of their decision making and who really care, like caring, kind, compassionate leaders who are also incredibly successful. That's what I'm really drawn to in spiritual leaders. So, I put them on my board.
Yeah.
And then I do have mentors and sponsors. So mentors, I don't know if you know the distinction between mentors and sponsors. So mentors are people who give you advice, and they're very helpful, and you could talk to them about different problems and issues you may be having, or have them guide you. Sponsors are the people who actually bring you opportunities and say they
Okay.
actually open up doors for you. They make the relevant connections for you. You should go meet this person, or I heard about this job and I recommended you for that opportunity or for that
Mhm.
board or whatever it is you're looking for. Sponsors actually, say your name when you're not in the room. They're incredibly important to have. And I got confused earlier in my life. I thought all my mentors would automatically become sponsors, but that's not the case. And so sometimes, sponsors and mentors can look very different. And again, I've been surprised who sponsored me. I didn't even know they knew I existed.
Yeah.
Then I found out, well, they put me up to be a team leader for that job or role. So make sure you have lots of both in your life. And the sponsor sometimes a little bit more hard to come by. It has to be organic. So again, cast a wide net and see what mentors can become sponsors, or maybe people who are independently going to sponsor you. And then the last role I talk about is it's like subject matter experts who kind of complement your skill set. So for me, because I'm a clinician and I grew up, doing a lot of science, um, even though I spent time at McKinsey, I sometimes need people who have really good financial and legal backgrounds to run things by. So I have a few of them on my board because they really complement my skill set. For some of my friends who are real financial experts and who are like investors or, or lawyers, sometimes I'm on their board because I can walk them through the science or tell them how excited I am about a disease area, things like that. So that's kind of how the way I break down the board. And you have to cast a wide net. It's okay if people say no. It never hurts to ask. And if anyone else also like says something great about you, like follow up on that. Before I would just like let it just like bounce off me. So many times that someone said, "Oh, you did a great presentation," or "I was so impressed by that disease strategy you put together." That was a real amazing opportunity for me to say, "Thank you so much. I'd love to, actually talk to you a little bit about it and maybe get your ideas. Would you be open to having lunch with me?" Or just
Yeah.
even a conversation, and build that over time.
Yeah, that's a great. No, I love the breakdown here, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like, no, one of the different things probably than how we grew up. No one's untouchable anymore. You can get someone's email, you can DM them. They might not get back to you, and that's fine. But I think there's I mean, I even look at just this podcast and like, so many doors can be opened just by asking, just by reaching out. And I think not, if you're always just asking like for, oh, we meet for 2 hours. Okay. That's maybe difficult for people, but just even opening the door of a conversation or ask them a question to get some response, I think is um, super available nowadays than it ever was.
It's so true. And the other thing I want people to know is that people do want to help you. Like
Yeah.
they genuinely do. They may be really busy and not have the bandwidth, which is totally understandable. But they also may say, I'm going to come back to that person when I get some opening in my schedule. So, it always amazes me. But, I want to help people. I know other people want to help people and people want to help me. And it's a really rewarding thing. So, that's true. Like you're actually giving them a beautiful opportunity to help you, especially the younger generations. Like we all want to, feel young. And I love mentoring younger
Yeah.
generations because they're just so phenomenal. And I learn so much from them. And the other part of this is that, and then you have so much to offer to the people you're asking for help.
Right.
So, for example, you may be really connected in a certain area that could be very interesting to that person you're asking for help from. So, always think about what could be the win-win. Like, how can you be helpful to that person that you're asking for help? That's why it's like a two-way relationship, and
Yeah.
that'll make it even stronger.
Yeah, and there was a great book I read called The Go Giver by Bob Berg, and they talk about the law of reciprocity. Like,
Mm.
again, if you're only like, oh, I'm going to ask, I want to get all this stuff. Like, why don't you go get, like, I liked your thing of the sponsor. Go be a sponsor for someone. Like, shout out people, help them, open some doors for them, right? And to your point, be cheerleaders for people, and eventually that'll come back again. That positive, goodwill will come back as well. It might take some time, but I think that's kind of how the world goes rounds.
It
Right.
really does. As you know, it's like you have to be in flow. What
Yeah.
goes around comes around, and it also feeds into like that karmic nature of life.
Yeah.
But I did do a TED talk last summer, and I talked about shattering the glass ceilings by finding the right mirrors. And one of the things I talked about at the end of my TED talk is all of us can be a mirror starting today. We all have people in our lives that we can be a mirror for. And that means be their cheerleader, have their back, say something nice to them, support them in different ways. Even kind words go so far. So we have so much power to make change in other people's lives as well.
Yeah.
And that's regardless of, your age, your level, whatever you've accomplished. I think we're all leaders in our own right.
Yeah. Great point. All right. I've been leaving you suspense. We have our last question. What's your process for pressure testing an idea before committing? Pressure testing an idea before committing.
Yes. Well, in some ways, it is somewhat similar to my vetting of kind of decisions I make when I'm going to join like a company or a board or kind of start a company, because I do start lots of companies. I like to start companies. I like to start programs. I'm an initiator.
Okay.
I love being innovative and creative. I can execute as well, but my true passion comes in like when I get to start something new. Um, is that I think for that point, I may even go more to like technical experts on my board, like
Mm-hmm.
and the investors, like, is this a good idea? Is this financeable? Because sometimes even when things are great ideas, sometimes the time isn't right for them.
Yeah.
I've come to believe that timing is so important in our life, but also like even in our industries. So sometimes there's just, if it's just not the right time for an idea, it may still be something you should pursue, but it can really be an uphill battle. And you can really feel like you're hitting your head against the wall. So just, I like to like, again, pressure test this with investors of all different backgrounds, because all the investors have different opinions too, by the way. There's a joke like if you get like five different investors in a room, you're going to hear five different opinions. So they all invest in different things, so it's interesting. So just again, and trusted advisors, people who I really have a respect for scientifically, clinically, financially, and from their business acumen. So I kind of I'll do that and vet that idea with a bunch of people.
Yeah. Well, I want to get a transition here because I want to talk about the book, The Mirror Effect, and the big topic I kind of circled here because this is something I've challenged my whole life is the inner critic, the self doubt. So maybe and we might just spend the whole conversation on this. We'll see, but that kind of putting up the mirror for ourselves. Can you start there? Can you kind of share a background maybe as a framework or a foundation for that point?
Yes, I'd be happy to. I just think it's so important, as you're saying. I really truly believe, and probably this is also because of my spiritual background, that it all starts and ends with ourselves. Because at the end of the day, like we live with ourselves. It's everything we see, experience, feel is filtered through our filters and our biases and our thought patterns and beliefs. And when we have a lot of limiting and negative thought patterns and beliefs, it can color everything we're experiencing in our life, not only professionally, but personally also. And so I think it's so important. And then I do make the argument in the book and in the TEDx talk and what I've been learning is that I think it's possible that women and people from different backgrounds especially underrepresented backgrounds, minority groups, immigrants,
Mm.
neurodivergent, any background that you could be where you just sometimes feel like you don't fit in or belong. This could even be introverts in a very extroverted like corporate culture. Um, you can actually have a lot of conditioning that tells you maybe you don't fit in for these reasons that are kind of out of your control in terms of your own personality or the way you appear, things that you're just born with, but then somehow you then take that on to be somewhat negative for
Yep.
yourself. So many of us have had conditioning in our lives, especially in our younger childhood years, that kind of stayed with us throughout our years, unbeknownst to us. It's kind of like, we're basically on this journey with these limiting thought patterns and beliefs. And some of us have even experienced some traumatic experiences, people, incredible cruelty or some type of abuse. And all of that, we do intend to internalize all of that. And that becomes part of our narrative. And it can be very damaging, but we may not even know that it's damaging for us. And
Yeah.
so one day I woke up and realized that I was very much operating from a place of fear, despite all my successes and my accolades and my achievements. And I was so shocked to fully be honest with myself about how much fear was driving me. And when I realized that, and I thought, oh my God, if I'm experiencing this, I mean, and I've experienced this my whole life and I didn't recognize it, we've got to talk about this because it's a terrible way to live, honestly.
Yeah.
It
What
makes
did
you
you fear, if I can ask?
failure.
Okay, failure.
And more than failure, I just feared not being perfect.
Oh,
I really, because of also my successes, I think it had to be bigger and better the next time around. So I really got caught in this prism of perfectionism, this trap of perfectionism, which is so damaging and a joy killer. It's really, and as we talk about, comparison is a thief of joy, right? These things that we find ourselves in, even on the back of success, may not be good for us. So again, I went on this inner journey. I've done a lot of self exploration. I've done a lot of therapy and coaching, and I'm so glad I have. But I still had more insights and epiphanies as I've gotten older. And I think part of it is you get to older age and you even feel more freedom. So I coined what I call the FIDS: fear, insecurity, doubt, and shame. And I make the point that all of us should be holding up our own mirror and really taking time to raise awareness about what's going on in that mind of ours and in our body, really paying attention because our body and it's so wise. We have feelings and things that come up sometimes even before the thoughts come in. When we get that pit in our stomach or when the hair on the back of our head or back of our neck goes up, we actually know that we're not comfortable, but we often kind of dismiss it, like shove it under the rug and just don't pay attention to it. We're so comfortable being uncomfortable. We're like, oh, I'm just going to deal with that later. Don't pay attention to what's going on for you and watch your thought patterns and beliefs. In the beginning, I just talk about raising awareness for what's happening. Are you having a lot of negative self-talk? Who of us have an inner critic in the room, right? Like raise your hand. My friend calls it the itty bitty shitty committee. Like it's in it. It's like it's not only a passenger, sometimes it's driving our bus. So let's raise awareness for it, and then let's try to break free of it. And you do that by again naming it and having compassion towards yourself about having these feelings, and then learning truly how to accept and love yourself, which comes over time. It doesn't come overnight because all these things have been deeply ingrained with us. So I cite resources and teachers that I have found incredibly helpful. There's an amazing professor and researcher, Kristen Neff, who does a lot of work on self-compassion. And I have found, her books and workbooks and guides and journaling prompts very, very helpful for myself personally. So I kind of bring everything I know and everything I've done to help break me free of my FIDS to into this book. And then I have an accompanying workbook and journal myself because I really, at the end of every chapter, while I was summarizing the key takeaways, summarizing those, I still wanted to make it more alive.
yeah.
So I have journaling prompts and exercises to, again, help you get out of your head. And there's actually data and research that shows that handwriting journaling can help us change habits and change thought patterns and increase cognitive enhancement and engagement and neuroplasticity. So I kind of bring all that together in this book and workbook to help us deal with our FIDS.
Yeah, and I could definitely relate the journaling. That was something for me after I went through divorce and just kind of a lot of, just mind is all effed up with, a lot of things. And obviously to your point, like a lot of finally kind of all this stuff from childhood and just stories I was telling myself and the fear, uncertainty, doubt, all that stuff, the journaling was probably the biggest thing for me. I mean, reading books helped, but then doing those in journaling prompts, starting like kind of mid 2019 was probably one of the best things I've ever done for my life. So yeah, I could definitely relate. I mean, you have to put the practice in. Like, it's not going to happen for yourself, and it is uncomfortable doing it. But even sitting for 5 minutes a day, it's amazing what gets exposed.
It truly is, right? It doesn't have to be long periods of time. To your point, I mean, people think, oh, what, I have to, spend an hour journaling. No, you don't. You just have to start the process and keep taking those baby steps and then build those muscles so that it becomes part of your life. I'm so glad to hear that that helped you. And I'm sorry to hear about what you went through, but we all
Yeah.
go through things.
Yeah.
All of us have our what I call the bumps in the road, the curveballs, the things that throw us off center.
Yeah.
And all of these things are traumatic experiences like loss, divorce, moving, as we talk about the big stressors in life, very common experiences. So there's that shared commonality, that shared humanity that we can also lean into. But that journaling, I think, is so helpful. It's been so helpful for me. And I also talk about in the book, find whatever is helpful for you. For some people, it's
Right.
being in nature and going on long walks and hikes and spending time with themselves or gardening or whatever that looks like for you. That's wonderful and great, but just do it and
Yeah.
commit to yourself to take care of yourself and do that
Yeah.
self-care.
Well, I think that's part of the process. You said the awareness, like we have to understand that we have to do something different than, because I don't know about you. Like I grew up, again, born 83. Like I grew up in like upstate New York. It was like the hard nose, like you don't talk about feelings. You're a boy, you're a man. Don't talk about your feelings. Just put them under the rug. And then eventually you're like, that's maybe not the best thing to do. And when you
Yeah.
realize you expose that, like, oh my gosh, okay, there's some things I haven't, haven't unsettled here. I don't know if you went through that at all.
I definitely did. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much I just kind of pushed way deep down inside of me. And even though I'm a woman, I think sometimes I very much behave like a man, like that really driven to succeed. And again, I think probably because I had a wonderful mom, as I mentioned, as a role model, but I think she had a lot of masculine qualities.
Yeah.
She was a complete driver. We didn't talk about our feelings. I wasn't allowed to cry. I mean, it was pretty serious. And I think, and it was just like, get yourself back up again and just do what needs to be done. And just, and I think I just didn't even know what I was feeling about things. And I see this in myself. I see this in a lot of other high achieving people or just in general, people around me and a lot of men. And as we know, it's very difficult to develop intimate relationships when we can't be vulnerable and honest with ourselves. And that actually can impede intimacy. And I've definitely experienced that myself personally, because if you're always trying to have all the answers and be seen in a certain way or have that mask on, then we're not really, allowing ourselves to truly be ourselves and even know what we want in life.
Yeah. What else in this book? Because I'm kind of curious your perspective, where you told the editor, you told the publisher, like this is not coming out. Like this has to be in there 100%. Is there something that you would call out?
Well, definitely the FIDS part. Like I really, spent, as the first four chapters on the part one, which is holding up your mirror and knowing thyself. And, I also really want to have stories. And sometimes my editor would say, well, this seems like a little redundant.
Yeah.
And, but I said, I think it's so important to go deep on these
Yeah.
subject matters. Like, for example, I talk a lot about our archetypes, like people pleasing and the imposter syndrome and the FIDS and the bitch boss and the manager, micromanager, because sometimes I feel like we just sometimes gloss over it. And I really wanted to make it alive for us and tell stories from my own experiences and from my friends and people I've mentored and sponsored to kind of make this alive for people. So I hope it's not too redundant, but I kept feeling like going back and talking about it again and again. Because sometimes the fourth time you hear it, you're like, oh,
Yeah. Right.
yes,
Right.
that's what's been happening for me. And
Yeah.
you kind of have to come at it different angles, It's not just like a straight shot, and then also there were these concepts of part two is about understanding your environment and reflecting on your surroundings because it's interrelated. what's going on inside us is also impacted, and sometimes it even comes about because of the negative environments we find ourselves in. So it's like this circle, we don't grow up just doubting ourselves. Like, that's not like something we're born with. We come into this world eyes wide open, super curious and engaged, and I love children and babies because of that. I mean, they just, so there's a wonderment in their eyes and their voices, and but then they experience reality in their environments, and it's like this back and forth that occurs. And sometimes then we create negative environments because that's where we're coming from, and that lack mindset. So I spent a lot of time in the second part of the book talking about negative work environments, including gaslighting.
Yeah.
And I said, because people need to understand what these concepts are
Yeah.
so that they really understand, oh my God, that is what's happening to me. So I did, kind of fight that battle to say, no, I really want to spend a lot of time on these concepts, even though, sometimes people have heard about this before. I wanted to come at it, in a very deep way through storytelling and through really writing about it and citing the research also, so that we don't just gloss over it and we really understand it thoroughly and deeply.
Yeah. Well, I think the best books have that art of storytelling, and like I've always found, the deeper the details, you feel like you're a part of it. When it's very surface level and they're not sharing much, it's kind of like, okay, I can't really visualize this, I guess is the best way.
Yes, I totally agree. And so that was from day one, it was a huge part of the book. And I wanted to bring stories into each chapter to kind of illustrate the points, so then people could just really feel like they could relate to other people and that they are not alone in going through this journey. And I think when I started sharing my stories, even within the biotech community, and we created something called the Biotech CEO Sisterhood, that has been this wonderful organization. And now we have all these sisterhoods popping up everywhere. And it's been transformative for a lot of us. That's why I call it the transformative effect of the mirror effect.
Yeah.
I just find that people said, wow, you went through that? It's not, I'm like, yes, it's not you. And they're like, it's not me. I'm like, no, there's nothing wrong with you. And just that freedom and that insight, and the eyes light up and they're like, oh my God, it's not me. And then they don't feel so alone in their suffering. And because I think shame that breeds in isolation. And so I want to break all those barriers and make sure people don't feel alone on this journey.
I love that. Well, congrats on publishing this book. I mean, this is, again, your first one. That's awesome. I'm sure you're going to get pressure to do a number two at some point, but enjoy this one, right?
Yes, writing a book is, as you know, it's a lot of hard work. I actually didn't know, but then you have to get the book out there, and I wanted to be impactful, and I wanted to help as many people as possible. So I'm really thrilled. It's been very rewarding. I call it the gift that keeps on giving. I feel like it's really been a gift to me in my life and a blessing.
Yeah.
It was the journey. It was hard to put it all down on paper and actually kind of relive certain experiences and write about it. Was also triggering, but also very healing. So it was a really healing journey for me.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Where can people find you? Do you hang out on LinkedIn, or is there anywhere else on? I saw you're on Instagram. Like, anything specific you'd call out?
Yes, I am on social media, and LinkedIn is my kind of main platform, but I'm on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok,
Yeah.
and just again wanting to connect to really as many people as I can. I also have a newsletter, a monthly newsletter that I put out, dealing with a pertinent topic that is relevant to me at the time, and again trying to be very vulnerable and transparent and honest about how to deal with it. I also talk about parenting and my life as a working mom, and as well as a professional and a startup founder, and so all different aspects of my life. We're also multifaceted.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I bring all of that into my writing and into this newsletter. So, and I usually have some articles to go along with it. So please follow me on social media, join my newsletter. You can buy the book on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, through my publisher website, Amplify. And I just look forward to staying in touch with people. And,
Yeah,
we're all in this together is one of my
absolutely.
favorite phrases. So
Yeah,
I
and
truly believe.
and I'll put everything else in the show notes. So, Sheila, this was an absolute blast. I enjoyed the conversation, and I appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you, Brian. I really enjoyed it too. And I wish the best for you.